but she does a masterclass on what, tennis? Like, you're not going to play tennis like Serena Williams. Welcome to Spinsters, a podcast where we are the clear moral choice here. I'm Haley. This is Jordan. We are joined by our producer, Harry, and our social media manager, Sierra. Today, we're also joined by Caspian Kang. We are so excited. It's a great conversation. And before we get to it, our housekeeping, subscribe to our YouTube, make me and Jordan some money. And also me and producer Harry were on the Long Shot Pod, and me and Jordan were on What Did I Miss with Michelle Beadle. It was an award show. The non-traditional NBA award show was very fun.
Yes, very fun. So
check all of those out. And are we about to go into a break? Is that what happens after these? Okay. Yes. And here's Caspian Kang after the break. We'll start by Jay, if you want to introduce yourself and your stuff.
My name's Jay Kang. I'm writer for the New York Times opinion section. And I have a podcast with some of my friends too called Time to Say Goodbye.
And you wrote a book. Are you done plugging your book? Has it been like a year? Is that when people cut it off?
I think it's like when your relationship with your book turns, which I'm at. I'm like, I get this out of my life. But everyone should buy it. It's called The Loneliness of Americans. Your relationship with it doesn't have to reflect mine, but mine definitely. It's just like, what's next in my life? Let's figure it out.
Yeah. That's funny. I've always wondered about that because sometimes even with an article, I just wish, I'm over it and I don't want to be associated. Not because it's like I don't agree with it anymore or anything, but it just the idea of something I did existing forever is pretty terrifying to me, which is why when we started a YouTube page, I tried to revolt for many months. But here we are.
Yeah, I write twice a week now, which is new for me because I was always a magazine writer. I'd write twice a year. And I will say I like it a lot better just because once you're done with something, it's over and then you're on the next thing. And, I've written some pretty bad things and I'm just like, well, I don't know. Who cares? It's fine. Whereas if you're doing it twice a year, it sticks with you a little bit more. And you're like, man, that was terrible. I should have done better. But now it's just like, I don't know. Well, that was a bad one. And that next one will hopefully be better, which is actually quite liberating in a lot of ways.
It is. I totally agree with that. When you have a big feature story, you attach yourself to it. You keep reading it over and over and over. And When I'm done, I am done. I never even open the tab again. I'm not talking about it anymore. Gotta release
There's no
yourself.
Pin tweet. Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. You don't spend all this time being like, why is nobody talking about me? You're just like, I don't know. Maybe I just whiffed on that one, or maybe people missed it. It's fine. It's much healthier, even though you do spend a lot more time, sitting in your basement typing. But that's not. I like doing that, so it's fine.
So we've wanted to have you on for a long time, but we got you on to talk about the Celtics, which I'm sure is something that you hear often.
Do I? I don't
know. No, that was sarcastic. I was like, oh, did he not get that? That was very sarcastic. Do you have a fandom? I don't know.
Well, I spent like the first half of, I don't know, maybe third of my childhood in the Boston area. And so I was like a Celtics fan and a Red Sox fan. I'm still a Red Sox fan, but then we moved to North Carolina and just became a Tar Heel fan. So, and then I don't know, it just became very, I had a hard time identifying with being a Boston fan when I turned when I was 18 to 25 or something. And it slowly eroded. And now like the Patriots, for example, no way. I think when I was 7, I would be like, oh yeah, Craig James, Tony Eason, this is great. I love the Patriots. But now there's nothing left there. The Celtics, I don't know. I intellectually think, oh, I should like the Celtics. I'm not a Charlotte Hornets fan or something like that, So, but I certainly, it's case by case. And if they're playing someone that's, I dislike more, then I root for them. But they're not a particularly special team to me or anything.
I wasn't sure. Yeah. It feels like you either love the Celtics or you hate the Celtics. So You are one of a kind. I've never met someone who's like neutral.
In between Celtics fan. Yeah.
I don't. Do you like if you have any familiarity with like the Piedmont region of North Carolina, right? Like, it's kind of strange because you feel very like there's at least when I was growing up, you didn't feel very connected to Charlotte in any sort of way, you know. And so all the Charlotte teams started when I was like in middle school. So the Hornets and the Panthers. And Charlotte just kind of far away, and then people in that area just like kind of reject it out of hand. And then there's all these kind of college basketball lifers, right? Where it's just like, you know, like, why would you ever watch people who get paid to play, you know? Or like,
you don't got to tell me. I'm in Kentucky. Like, that's,
right.
Yeah, I hear that every day.
There's only one thing to be like, no, you know, like, yeah, if you want to watch a bunch of people dribble around and you know, like not play team basketball, then go watch the Hornets. And you're just like, I don't know, you know.
The way to identify that is if they bring up travels, because one thing about people who love college basketball is that the minute you bring up the NBA, they're like, they just travel all the time.
That is a fact. Oh my God, that is so true.
It's true. It was always like mildly racist in North Carolina too, you know, in ways that I'm sure are quite obvious. But it was like, you know, even the Duke fans were, you know, obviously just racist, but the Carolina fans, they'd be like, well, you know, if it's not Dean Smith shepherding in civil rights, you know, and teaching these young men how to, you know, young boys how to be men, then it's not real. And then they go to the NBA and they get all rich, you know. It's like, just like, oh, it's so messed up. It's such a messed up dynamic. Yeah. You're like, okay, I got it. You're like, oh, so you're not happy that this guy who, like, you know, played for 4 years, for 3 years for you is now, you know, doing well and can support his family, and like other people like him be like, no, you know,
stay in college forever.
Yeah, they should make college 6 years so that, you know.
Yeah, it got much worse, I think, for both the schools in Kentucky and both the schools in North Carolina when one and done became more popular.
Right.
Because then, that kind of narrative just blew up even more.
Yeah. I'm sure they did not like that.
No, definitely not.
Yeah, all right, go ahead.
Oh, no, what were you going to say?
Oh, no, I was just like, especially because, like, you know, like with Duke, like it was always, you know, Mike Krzyzewski being like, our guys stay 4 years and they get a great education at Duke. And the implication was always like, oh, well, those, you know, one and done, or not even one and doneers, but like people like Jerry Stackhouse, Rasheed Wallace, who stayed 2 or 3 years. You know, they'd be like, oh, well, what education could they have possibly gotten? And you're like, your guys didn't get any education. Like, what are we talking about here, you know?
Yeah. Speaking of Coach K, did you guys see that he was there last night?
I did see that.
And Tatum said after the game, it was the first game he's been to since Tatum was at Duke to see him play.
Really?
Wow. Jason got drafted in 2017. What kind of asshole doesn't go see his former player play for that long?
I'm trying to think if like the calendar didn't add up. Like if when he was in the playoffs, they were in. No, that still doesn't make sense.
No, because the thing about it, the Celtics have gone to the famously have gone to the playoffs for this many years.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Maybe just mad because he only stayed 1 year. But that used to be true, but it can't be true anymore because everyone at Duke only stays 1 year now, you know? Like he was always mad at Corey Maggette because Corey Maggette left after his freshman year. And there was this guy like Will I can't believe this is... If I'm getting too deep into like ancient Duke history, just tell me. There's this guy Will Avery who stayed like 2 years, and Coach K like won't talk to him, and he wasn't at the, you know, like he wasn't part of the gigantic procession of ex-Duke players like at his last game in Cameron. But he can't do that now. Like every single one of his players stayed 1 year. You know, like he's gonna be mad at Marvin Bagley or something like that. You're like, you told me this was the deal. You know, I'm just gonna stay 1 year.
I think also like there was a lot of Duke players in that game, so it seemed like he was kind of, you know, saying if I go
Kyrie,
to one game, I get Kyrie, you get Seth.
Yeah, Seth.
Oh,
Seth Curry,
right.
Jason Tatum. So maybe he's just like, well, this is the one game I can, you know, make up for a lot of these players.
Yeah, you should have had one of those.
Yeah.
You should have one of those like patchwork jerseys with all of them on it. It's like, I'm here for all 3 of my guys.
Like one split down the middle.
Yeah.
Boston, yeah.
Kyrie and Jason Tatum. Yeah.
And no Seth. Yeah, I forgot about Seth being a Duke player, to be honest.
Seth transferred in. Didn't he start at like Liberty or something like that?
You're right.
Probably.
You're right.
That's the Curry way.
So maybe that's what it is.
No family is better at positioning themselves as underdogs while being like extremely
great.
extremely set up to be NBA players and successful. Yeah. They're good. I just remember my take from when we started recording. The Celtics game. Well, let's talk about the game a little bit last night.
Right.
What the fuck? I genuinely was shocked at. Oh wait, I have a stat that I have to read because I'm sure we'll talk about the defense. That was like the biggest story to me. Mm-hmm. The best way to illustrate just how good the defense was last night for the Celtics is knowing that KD and Kyrie went 1 for 17 in the second half.
Oh,
yeah,
wow.
KD by himself went 0 for 10. Like, he did not make a shot in the second half. That has never happened in his career in a second half.
First time?
First
Oh,
time.
wow.
Playoffs, regular season.
Yeah,
I saw that stat. That's insane.
He looked like Danny Green with a wingspan. He looked terrible. I've never seen him like that. I'm not even being hyperbolic. I do think that sports fans in general have this thing where their memory is like so short. You like will be super onto a player or a team for like a month, and then he has one bad game, and all of a sudden he's like a fraud. Mm-hmm. But I've genuinely never seen KD like that. Not even in college.
Yeah, the closest was that game where Clay hit all those shots, when they were up 3-1 and Clay scored however many points in the second half. And both Katie and Ross seemed pretty shook at that point. But it wasn't like this. I mean, he just looked like a different player. And he actually looked like he was bothered by the crowd. He looked like he was really bothered by, all the people that were throwing on him. And then it was, he just didn't look right. It almost looked like he was hurt or something like that, or at least like extremely discouraged. And then Kyrie didn't touch the ball in the fourth quarter. It's one of the strange. It really was one of the strangest games because I thought that KD was going to score 50 points in this game, and that they were going to win. Yeah. Or that Kyrie was going to score 60, and they both kind of just faded, which.
Yeah.
I was very surprised by it. I thought both those dudes are so competitive, and KD has been this guy who always rises to the occasion for the past, 6 years or something, 5-6 years. And he seemed like he was somewhere else.
He seemed flustered. Especially like the first couple minutes of the game. I just remember watching, there were so many foul calls. I was like, this isn't even really basketball at this point. They're just bullying them, throwing double teams at them, and the game plan was clear. We're not going to let KD and Kyrie beat us. And that's when Bruce Brown had like 12 points of the first 16 points for the Nets. They're like, yes, this is the game plan.
Yeah, and
even though they were losing.
Too.
Yeah, Dragic. They were like, this is the game plan. We don't care. We're going to come back as long as KD and Kyrie are not the people. And it surprised me how well it worked. But like you're saying, Haley, that's a credit to their defense. It was out of this world.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the thing is that if the Nets need their supporting cast to be very, very good. But also if they are the ones who are scoring the majority of the points, like that's a really bad sign. That will never not be a bad sign for them. Mm-hmm. Right. And Steve Nash just looked like, I don't know. I saw this one tweet that said like, man, can you like scream a little or like clap or something? Because it wasn't even just like he looked flustered. He just looked like he was hanging out. It was so confusing.
Yeah, I thought the whole game was confusing because you would think that after game one, after, all the Boston fans acting, I'm sure like they were acting, and then Kyrie, flipping them off and then them losing in this terrible way, right? This sort of like really weird way, that they would just come out and win by 20. And it seemed like at the beginning of the game, maybe that was what was going to happen. And then they just kind of bailed. Like, I don't know. I've never seen that. And I kind of think they're going to get swept now, where it's just like, well, the stuff that Nash said after the game where he was just like, this is a new team and they're starting to learn to play together. It's like, what are you talking talking
Wait,
about.
what?
And then and Kyrie.
I did not hear that.
Yeah,
What
yeah.
the hell?
Well, hold on. Okay, well, look, I'm sourcing this from a tweet I saw, so who knows?
No,
you
that
know?
makes it makes sense, but it's really bad.
And Kyrie was saying, well, maybe this is, I'm not mad at these guys. Maybe it's their time to go out and do well. And it's like, what are you're down 2-0. You're going back home. Like, what is this?
Basically going back to a neutral location. That's why I know that, like, the second that game ended, I thought this is going to be a sweep. Because they're literally going, Barclays there's not a home crowd there.
Right.
That is not like an influential place to play. So right before we got on, we all saw the tweet that said Ben Simmons is going to play in Game 4. Did you see that?
Wait, no? Really?
Yes.
Oh, my God.
Yes.
Why are they doing this to him?
Horrible. I know.
Why? Because I think it was after, I feel like just yesterday, Nash said, he has a long way to go. Like, he just played contact, but he has a long way to go to be comfortable playing next day. He's playing Game 4. Like,
that's, it just makes no sense because it's like, all right, so you have this guy who, let's say that everything Ben Simmons said is true, right? Like, let's say he does have a hurt back, and let's say that he dealt with a lot of mental health stuff, which is, like, I don't know, like, it probably is difficult to be kind of humiliated by, and then have your coach and former friend throw you. And maybe he is very fragile. So you're going to put him in this game against these killers, where he's like his first game, and he was barely playing 4. They were like, oh, he played 4-on-4, with some contact yesterday.
Literally yesterday.
That sounds like how I play basketball, It's like, it's like generally 4-on-4, you jog around, there's very little contact, and now he's going to
go be in a game with Marcus Smart. Good
right.
luck.
Go guard Jason
and
Tatum.
Jalen, yeah.
Right.
I mean, it was Jalen, Jason is who I meant to say. I mean, yesterday, what it reminded me of is, Jordan, I know you used to nanny. Jay, have you ever, like, babysat or do you have kids? I don't know.
I have a 5-year-old, yeah. So
okay,
most of my life is babysitting.
Yeah. If you've ever been, like, around a group of kids and they get really hyper, there's this thing where, like, if they all attack you at the same time, like, it is overwhelming. You know what I mean? Like, if they all decide that, like, they want something or whatever. I have a bunch of little cousins right now who are all boys. And it reminded me of that, their defense, except from grown-ups. It was so intense. And I just it just does not seem like a good idea to throw Ben in there. I mean, the pros are like, okay, you get another ball handler. They really need it. I guess this frees up Kyrie and KD, but frees them up for what? It's not going to be a distraction. They're not going to pay him much mind defensively as a shooter because for obvious reasons. So I just don't. I don't know. I don't.
Right, and why wouldn't they just foul him every single time? And just be like, okay, remember the last time you stepped on a basketball court? Like I don't know how many free throws you've shot since then, but it seems like it's probably not many. And so like, yeah, like here you go. Relive it all. And of course they'll do that. It seems like it's cruel to Ben. I don't really like Ben Simmons, and I don't feel too much sympathy for him. But it is, if you're the Nets and you're like, all right, we have to invest in this guy for the next 4 years at least, and what are ways we could totally break him? And this is one of them, right? It's just like, let's have him just do it all over again,
Yeah. Like we said this on another podcast. Like the last time he played basketball was in a high pressure situation and it did not go well.
It was horrible.
So what are we going to do? We're going to put him in a must win game. They have to win, right. I feel like in, these next couple games. And they're like, okay, be this all-star great person right off the bat. I think even as the Celtics know that's not going to happen. So to your point, Haley, they're not going to pay him any mind. It would be more of a surprise if he does well. I don't know if anyone's expecting him to. I don't even know if the Nets are expecting him to. Just seems like run a couple practice games before you go into the series. I'm so
right.
This.
How many times have these, because they don't practice very much when the season's going on, especially older players like Kyrie and KD. So like how many times have they actually played basketball with Ben Simmons? I mean, it's got to be extremely limited. So I I don't know. It's that I didn't know that. That sounds like a horrible idea, but it's going to be very entertaining to watch. You know?
Yeah, unfortunately, it will be very entertaining to watch against like the most in sync defense that has successfully shut down two of the best scorers in the NBA.
Right.
Yeah, of course, what could go wrong? So you tweeted, I have it pulled up. This was game 1, to be fair enough. So maybe your stance has changed. This was the first series I can remember where the Celtics are the clear moral choice.
Yeah. Well, I was trying to think about it, and my friend texted me afterwards, and I think he was correct, where he's just like, you're still wrong, because basically the way that basketball operates is that there's the Celtics and there's everybody else, and it's similar to what we were talking about with like college basketball now, where there's like Duke and then there's like everybody else. Mm-hmm. And, like Duke is always going to be that villain. And the Celtics, I guess through basketball history, he's right about that. But I don't know. First of all, I think the Celtics team is pretty likable, like it's, basically, I like all their players, except like Peyton Pritchard, but like, that's like a very minor dislike. Just like, how mad am I really at Peyton Pritchard? Yesterday at the end of the game, I was kind of annoyed. I was like, can you get that? I was like, what is this guy's like thumping his chest and like, screaming and stuff.
Like
just
an
like
NBA player.
Yeah,
it's like a creative player. I don't know.
Yes, he runs like I didn't tweet this, but I was thinking about it. It's like he runs kind of. I went to a very small school in Maine, like a Division III school of 1,500 kids, and like he runs like the basketball players on that team did, where it's just kind of it's a little lumbering. You can tell it's not like a premier athlete, but it's like pretty good at basketball. It's like this is not an athlete, Yeah. But yeah, they. I think that for this series, just because of everything with the Nets, right, with Kyrie and with this sort of bad season that they've had, and I don't know. I don't think it's really debatable, really, right? Like, it's like, do you really want Kyrie and KD and all this stuff to have like worked out in the end for them, right? Like, now, it's a little complicated. I don't know. Is Jaylen Brown and Al Horford vaccinated? Like, nobody knows,
Nobody knows.
So yeah, like maybe. So that would like they have to like go to Canada to find out, I guess, like this is the only way that we'll ever know. But I don't know. I think it's I guess I don't think it's particularly close in terms of who people should be rooting for, because you just don't want Kyrie's whole thing to have worked. Right. And it seemed for a while that it might work. Right. Like when he scored like 60 against Orlando, I was like, oh no, like they're gonna win, he's gonna get a trophy, and public opinion is kind of swinging, they're just like, this is ridiculous, right? Like that he's not allowed to play. People like Ted Cruz are like taking up his cause, and you're just like, oh my God, this is all gonna work for him, and he's gonna win, and he's gonna get like a congratulate, like Ted Cruz is gonna be like, he should have always been allowed to play, and it's gonna be horrible. Like all of that would have happened, but thankfully it doesn't seem like it is at this point.
I did enjoy the NBA being put in a weird position very publicly, because they just tend to like always do a poll on public opinion, or that's what it feels like to me. Mm-hmm. And in this one, like it directly went against what I feel like is their best interest, like him playing, but they also very much did not want him to, like they told the Nets they couldn't just accept that fine in New York. Right. And maybe I just didn't actually know how that all technically worked, but it felt like the NBA was in a very weird situation, which I enjoyed.
Yeah.
But what goes into like what is a moral team? Like what makes up the moral choice for a playoff team?
Well, that's a good question. I don't know. Do you so there's like thing that Haruki Murakami at some point was giving the speech, and he said, like, if there's a battle between an egg and a wall, right? I'm always going to be on the side of the egg, right? We should always be. And in that sense, you should always root against the Celtics, right? Like that's sort of the egg and wall type of thing. But I don't know. I think that I guess I just don't really think about the NBA as being so monolithic at this point, right? Like just because it's shifted. It's not just the Celtics and Lakers anymore. It's more player based, right? And it's superstar based. And I don't know. I think it's a little bit complicated. There was a period of time in like 2015, 2016, 2017 or so where I was arguing that everyone should just be a LeBron fan, because like we should appreciate what he does, and the style that he plays. and that every other style is actually morally inferior to him playing this style of basketball, where he's like, it combines so much intelligence and like unselfishness, and although like LeBron is selfish in other ways, but like generally that passing and being able to think things through, and that like this is like the highest form of basketball that's ever been played, and morally we should support it because we should want basketball to keep evolving. I still stand by that, by the way. But LeBron's old now, and so it's a little bit different. I don't know. I think
things are different. There's just been transitions. Like Jordan, you're someone who's had a team like your whole life with the Lakers. I just don't have an NBA team, so the super team thing was like I just didn't ever care. But it felt like people who were fans of teams did care a lot more about that. So do you feel like I almost feel like it's shifted back? Where now, like, super teams, people are like, well, no, it's fine. I mean, I don't really... It feels like it's more common, or maybe this is just the very small slice of representation that NBA Twitter gives us. But I almost feel like now we can cheer against the super teams because the people who were so anti, which always felt rooted in something much weirder, when people were, like, anti-player empowerment. Now it feels like it's been kind of accepted, so you can be against the Nets for that reason as well. What do you think?
Yeah, I agree. I think even though I have a team and I find myself just randomly clapping for the Nets against the Celtics. I don't know. It's just like a reflex. I'm not doing it on purpose. But even, I have players that I'm rooting for. Like, I think Chris Paul is a great example. Like, I'm not a Suns fan, but I'm like, I want Chris Paul to win. And there's other people
that's very anti-moral choice, I think.
Yeah, I want him to have a championship, but I think
me too. I'm kind of
it's other players where I'm like, you're very easy to hate. Like, I don't want you to succeed, so I'm automatically rooting for the other team or the other superstar on the other team to win. But even though I have a team, I'm kind of all over the place too with rooting for players.
It has very much shifted with Chris Paul, because I remember like the second he was on the Suns and they were becoming fun. I guess it just felt like something, because he hadn't completely orchestrated it himself. Suddenly the way his antics were like almost endearing and fun. Maybe it's just because he's older. I don't know. Or maybe it's because he's gone this long and he hasn't had a championship. And
yeah, I think it's his age. But I also think it's something about like, this is weird and biblical, but I think it was the year he spent in OKC and he was still good and he was still trying and he was like mentoring people, and people were like, oh, he did his penance. He like wandered through the wilderness and now it's his time. Right. And I fell for that too. I don't even know if I fell for it, but I bought it. I was like, okay, enough. I hate Chris Paul, because all the way back, because, like he played at Wake and he punched Julius Hodge in the balls. And, I found it all very, and, I went to a lot of Clippers games when I was working at Grantland because we were in LA Live. And I watched him play with Blake and DeAndre a lot, and I hated them, just because they complained the whole time. And now it's just like, all right, give the old man his ring. I'm gonna feel emotional about it. Be like, I've been through this whole like 20-year emotional journey with you.
Yes.
But you, it's like you did your time. The OKC thing, you like, and now you're a different person. You're like rebirthed. And I don't know. I'm rooting for them. I think I might be rooting for them more than any of the other teams at this point. And certainly more than like the Warriors or anything like that.
Yeah. So Harry and Sierra are Warriors fans, and so we've been very delicate, I think, with it. But talk about a weird moral arc, like, because when they had that season where they were bad, I was like, this is awesome. I enjoy watching this, not because they're bad, somewhat because they were bad, and that was kind of fun. But also because I like seeing a team have to figure it out a little bit. And to your point about Chris Paul, I liked that he gave as much as he did when his teams had a chance of winning a championship or even just going far in the playoffs. He gave all of that effort to OKC, and so I enjoyed those Warriors teams as a result. But are there any other playoff series that have a clear going on right now that have a clear moral choice that we should be rooting for?
I don't think so. The Warriors part, I just feel like I live here in the Bay Area, and I don't want to hear Draymond after they win. It's mostly my thing, you know. He's gonna say all sorts of crazy shit, and it's gonna be so annoying. And then, you know, and there's like a Warriors triumphalism up here that is, I don't know, it's a little annoying. Like, I was here for a very long period of time when they were very bad, right? And I was here for We Believe, and that was super exciting. And, you know, to have those same people sort of turn around and just be like, of course good things are going to happen to us. Of course we're going to win. You know, just like, I don't know, you seem to have forgotten when it was like Mike Dunleavy, you know, like scrambling around Oracle in front of like, I don't know, like 12,000 Filipino fans, you know, like, like that's what this team used to be. And that's why it was cool, you know, and now it's something else, you know.
Yeah. I'm trying to think about any others. I definitely am cheering for the Suns. I just think that that's fun. And there's something about what made the We Believe, and then sort of even as they went a bit further, teams fun for me too, was I always I'm not like a someone who needs this as a requirement for liking a team, but I always like when a team grows into a team that's very good and doesn't necessarily trade for it. Not because I'm like anti building a team that way. I just think it's cool to see people do that over time. Like, I really hope that happens with the Hornets and the Thunder one day, if they ever decide to take the leap.
One day.
Yeah, and actually try.
Our grandchildren will see that.
Yeah, exactly.
But yeah, I think that that's also what I like about the Suns, is that it's not entirely, but they didn't give up on Devin Booker after all those years. It's not like they had anything else, but I don't know. Everyone else seemed to like throw him away. That's kind of the thing about the NBA that I don't know necessarily like goes past Twitter, but we just throw players away, like Draymond, and I'm saying we, like me. I, you know, also am prone to this, like Draymond, really looking his age. I was like, man, they should not give him any more money. This is gonna go so downhill so fast. That was like, what, 2 years ago? A year and a half ago?
Yeah, even last year, it's like, can you play, you know?
Yeah, that's happened with a ton of players. I don't. That's my one thing with Russ. I'm not ready to like fully detonate Russ, because I'm like, what if? We just don't know. Look at Chris Paul. He had the worst contract. Like, everyone would tell you, he had the worst contract in the NBA when he got traded to the Warriors. He was untradeable. And then, you know. So.
Yeah, you got a whole other one. Yeah, it's crazy.
Oh gosh. Oh my god. I think one team that I'm excited for, and it's the opposite of what you're saying, Haley, of like they grew into a team, they completely made this team, and that's the Bulls. I really want DeRozan to be happy and play great, beautiful mid-range basketball as long into the playoffs as he can. So their win last night, I don't think I really buy Milwaukee going back to the finals. I don't know if I'm completely sold in on that. A lot of people seem to be sold in on that, but I want the Bulls to shake that up. I'm rooting for them, and specifically DeRozan.
Me too.
And Caruso.
Yeah, because that's the thing you were saying. Like, you know, it's not just DeRozan that got tossed on the scrap heap. It's also Levine. You know, people said the same thing that they're saying about Booker, which is like, oh, this guy just shoots a lot, and he's not a winning basketball player. He's just empty stats people. Now, a lot of times those people are right about that sort of thing, but it does seem like that determination comes super early now.
Yeah, it's like he's 23.
Right. With so Ingram, young. They're saying the same thing too. Now, maybe they'll ultimately be right about Ingram, but you know, like it's crazy how it really just takes like one playoff series and then everybody's opinion about it shifts, right? And I don't know. I like that. I actually like that because I don't like when, you know, the stat guys are like, oh, you know, like his true shooting percentage or something. Just like, shut up, you know? Like, he's like 21 years old. Just give him a little bit of time. Exactly. So if Levine can flip that with DeRozan, I'd be so happy. Yeah. And also, Giannis has won enough. It's okay. You know, it'll be.
Something about the Bucks, I just feel like they have a short attention span. I don't know if that makes sense, but that's how I feel about them. We're going to take a quick break, and then when we come back, we are going to talk about something that counteracts or did counteract the analytics people on Twitter, which is it NBA dark web, or did you call it dark web NBA?
Oh, the NBA dark web. Yeah.
Okay. Talk about NBA dark web when we come back. Okay, so Harry actually wasn't sure. I don't know if Jordan was either, but I remember a time where there were always NBA dark web tweets, and I really appreciated it because it felt like the only thing that was a requirement was just don't have to do your homework and make sure that you're in consensus with the rest of the internet. And because I started working at The Ringer when I was very young, like at 22, and then Bill Simmons like retweets you and all of a sudden you have all these followers, and it didn't feel like I was saying things that I wanted to say anymore.
Yeah.
It genuinely did.
You feel trapped because you don't want to have people screaming at you.
Oh my God. Right. And I was like still in this stage where I just wanted people to like me, and I wanted to, to feel like people thought I was smart. But so much of the time I was looking at what they're saying and I was like, that's so stupid. That's not correct. And so, yes, I always appreciated the space that NBA dark web was, even if it was just like a couple tweets. I just really liked it. I like the idea of it. So do you mind going into what it was and why you made something like that up?
Well, yeah, I think it was just because it seemed like for a while that on NBA Twitter, there's this huge consensus moving towards a type of analytics, right? And my thing I don't have any problem with analytics. In fact, like, when I was a younger sports fan, I was really into baseball. I was very much into this stuff. I'd like write into the baseball prospectus writers and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. But with basketball, it always felt like all these analytics were in process, and having worked in sports media for a while, I started to realize that the actual analytics that the teams are using are all proprietary, and that the average fan, or even like a lot of the writers who are writing from an analytics angle, really didn't have any idea what they were talking about, or like the stuff that they were using wasn't as good as they thought it was. And that it also felt kind of faddish, where it was like, well, every single time a company that has like some sort of VC backing or has some sort, connection with Sloan comes out with something, then they get this huge write-up by like any number of like, what is maybe like 3 or 4 people in particular who would write, I'm not gonna say their names, but you can guess, like, right, would write like these long features about it, being like, the future of analytics is like sleep tracking or something. And I'd be like, you're just doing PR for this company, Yeah. But then because those people had somewhat high purchase within NBA Twitter, that would all filter through, and then suddenly there would be like a new consensus that was literally just informed by PR for some sort of, company. And I found this to be completely intolerable, because I just want to watch this basketball game. I have my opinions on it. Some of them are informed. Yes, I do think it's better to take a 3-pointer than a 2-pointer, but I don't like watching people shoot 3-pointers the whole time. And you can't bully me into pretending that I like it, because it's just basketball. Like we're not feeding people here where we have to be at peak efficiency all the time. Like this is not anything important. I just want to watch the basketball that I want to watch, And also, I just don't want to deal with all of you people screaming at me all the time. And so, yeah, I tried to start this thing. It really was a joke, It was like, we're going to start the NBA dark web and it was a joke on like, the intellectual dark web, which is not something I support politically, but I thought it would be funny to just be like, do you have a heterodox NBA take? Do you want to rail against the Twitter consensus and all these, and all the woke mob of analytics, that they come to the NBA dark web where you could be like, but I think I got kind of co-opted by the Hooper versus basketball player conversation, which is kind of the same conversation, but I totally understood when it came out, because I was like, oh yeah, I just want to talk about Hoopers.
Yeah, I can see that being, a basketball player is very you care about true shooting percentage. A hooper, right. You want to have your crossover go viral, and like that's more what you care about. So I could see that those are similar. That's interesting.
Yeah. Or guys that just stand in the corner the whole time and everyone's like, it's amazing how he just stands in the corner the whole time and shoots, he's at 41% of his corner threes. And I'm just like, I hate that guy, like what's he do? Just go do something else. I don't want to watch you stand in the corner the whole time, but people are like, oh, efficiency. I'm just like, I don't know. I'd rather watch like a very entertaining, inefficient basketball game than watch like a very boring, efficient one. So, I don't know. That was kind of it. And it was also part of it was that, Haley, what you were saying before is something that when I was writing a lot about the NBA that I found somewhat frustrating, which was that there is a way in which like the consensus on NBA Twitter is very friendly to the league, and the league determines that because like I think a lot of people don't know is that the league is extremely PR averse in a way that's like crazy. Like try writing something about the NBA that's critical about its business in any sort of way, and you'll get
a phone call
in a second. Yeah. Emails from people way up in the NBA, right?
Oh yeah, head PR. The amount of times I talked to Mike. Shout out to Mike.
Right.
Berated by Mike.
Right. I've been berated by Mike too. Yeah. Or you get like, and if you're in like, I don't know, like, if I wrote it for the Times or something like that, you get these long lists of corrections that aren't corrections, and be like, none of these are an actual correction. These are just like, you saying that like you disagree with what I said. It's not a correction. And so I actually think that's somewhat toxic, right? Because I think that what it does is that you have these access reporters, which I think all do a good job. I don't have a problem with what they do. But, a lot of it is access driven, and those access driven people have to play the game that the NBA very powerful and angry PR people want to play. And so I don't know. I think that it's okay to just be like, if your job is not reporting on the league, which mine hasn't been in, I don't know, 10 years or something like that, just like, I don't know, like sometimes you can just be like, fuck the NBA, like this stuff sucks.
And for me, it's like for the fans too, purely like the people who aren't necessarily reporting, but people who read that reporting and then it kind of filters into their minds, but who have independently come to love analytics as well. It's not like I have a problem with that, or I don't, that's great supplemental knowledge, but it also creates this division with reporters who now have more access than ever to their readers and vice versa, that you can be right or wrong in sports. And the thing is like those numbers don't, like you said, tell the whole story. And a debate about which player is better than which player, unless you're asking a very direct thing, like which player is a better 3-point shooter, it's not cut and dry. Like these debates are not supposed to be cut and dry, and there's no like correct answer just because you can pull out a stat on their, I can't even make it up anymore, like their defensive viability
Raptor.
Yes, exactly. That doesn't, and so the it also has fueled, I think, more animosity around, no, I know that I'm correct and you're incorrect. And one time I was at a bar and someone brought up true shooting percentage. And I was like, this is over.
Yeah.
This is the end.
That's what you have to do, the Temecula thing.
This is the end. Yeah. It was awful. So that was my main issue with it. I just didn't like, there's like, there's a conversations, there's debates, and not in the way where it's like everyone's frustrated debates, just like simple, like, me and Jordan are talking about whatever. And we're talking it through. I don't like the idea in sports that people think they can be firmly right or wrong because a number tells them, because sports are inherently silly. They're ridiculous in their games.
Right.
I don't like the seriousness of it all, that numbers attached to it.
What's the fun of having that conversation, Like, it's like, in baseball, it was interesting because there was a sense that perhaps baseball could be solved. And it turns out that baseball can kind of be solved, but that the thing that you're watching is unwatchable, right? With all the shifts and the uppercut swings, and everybody comes in, throws 99 miles an hour and, pitches 2 innings. Like that's it. I find it impossible to watch baseball, so I don't anymore. But in basketball, there's just so many more variables that it almost seems impossible to solve, right? And then you do have, I don't know, like, what's the fun if you can't have a conversation like, is this guy gonna come and really perform in the playoffs, or is he a coward? And they're like, well, I don't know, like every discrete outcome is always the same, and you're just like, oh my god, please, I'm just here to give some takes, and
yeah.
Have some fun. I
just want Peyton Pritchard
your vibes.
looking prehistoric.
Right,
yeah,
right.
Exactly.
I don't care about Peyton Pritchard's true shooting percentage.
Yeah.
I just don't like how he runs. And maybe that makes me a bigot, but it's okay. I'm gonna be a bigot.
Jake, and that's
Pritchard's,
Jake Kang, everybody.
his running style. Okay, well, thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank
This was
you.
very fun. We appreciate it.
Well, that's our show. Keep leaving us voicemails. Remember, call the Kevin Love line. We want to try our very best to help with your relationship issues. That's really our side job. We love it. Call us at 502-874-4453 or send us an email at spinsters@bluehourpods.com to be featured on the show. And as always, shout out to our amazing producer, Harry Krinsky.
Hey, this is Cade from North Carolina, and I'm calling because I think that Scotty Barnes is the perfect NBA player match for the Spinsters podcast, and I think you guys should adopt him as your official NBA player. Just like how some NBA players are associated with certain brands, I think Scotty Barnes should be associated with the Spinsters podcast. First of all, he's a big hugger. I get really big hug vibes from your podcast. He's very emotionally intelligent. And, wants his teammates to express their emotions and just give them a hug if they're feeling down. And lastly, he just really has fun, doing Zumba with elderly people, which, just think that's very endearing. I think he's the most endearing NBA player. I think there should be a more connection with him in the Spinsters podcast. Maybe see if you can get him on. Anyway, that's just a thought. Thank you, guys. Love you. Bye.